Hey everybody, this is Patty. Welcome to the Witching Hour. Yes, that hour of the day when the veil is thin and magic happens. We have some beautiful magic for you today. Let's get to know her together. She is a druid, she is an herbalist, and an author. Let me introduce you to Ellen Everett Hopman. Welcome, Ellen.
Hi, thank you very much for having me. I'm
Thank
in
you.
Massachusetts.
Hi, Massachusetts. I'm in Hollywood. We're way
Yeah,
apart. So, I know you have lots of books and you're an herbalist and you're all sorts of things, but this is the book that I got for you, this Celtic Druidry, Rituals, Techniques, and Magical Practices. I have personally been to a few Druid rituals and they are some of my favorites I have ever been. But for my audience, tell everybody, even just we'll get to you afterwards, but what is a druid?
well, that's a complicated question
Yeah.
because there are many different kinds of druids, just as there are many different kinds of pagans and many different kinds of witches. And, I'm what's called a Celtic Reconstructionist Druid. So in the book, I do talk about the different kinds of druids, but I also explain that I'm a Celtic Reconstructionist. And what that means is that we're kind of nerdy. We enjoy reading the ancient material because for us that's the closest thing to the ancient druids. So 6th century, 7th century poetry, wisdom tales, statues of gods and goddesses, and the archaeological sites. That's what we like. So that's one kind of druid. There are other druids who say all you have to do is walk out in nature and sit down under a tree, and that makes you a druid. And we would never say that. But for us, well, as I say in the book, for us, it's about 50% nature and 50% scholarship. That's how we do it.
Like that. And I'm a nature girl, so I think that's what I maybe loved about your rituals and everything. Now, I use the moniker I am a witch, but I know
Mhm.
druids don't use the term witch, which I actually didn't know because I look at you, you look like a witch. You have gods and goddesses. So, what is it are you a pagan?
Yes, I'm a pagan, but there are druids who are not pagans, just
I
to make
love it.
life even more complicated.
I love that. So,
There
so
are
why do
Christian.
you
Yeah.
so why do you not use the word witch? Or what
Um,
makes you not a witch?
okay. Oh boy, this is a huge topic, but
Okay.
in ancient times, this is part of Indo-European culture, both in Celtic society, all the way into India. That's why it's called Indo-European. There was a particular class structure. So you had the Druids, who were part of the sacred class called Nemed, which is the equivalent of Brahmins in India. Then you had the warriors. Then you had the farmers and producers. And then you had, among the Celts, you had slaves. Everybody had slaves. Okay, that was nothing unusual. And
Yeah.
then in Hinduism, of course, they have the untouchables or the Sudra, but it's the exact same social structure. And they both, Hinduism and Celtic religion, both come from the same root, which is the Vedic cultures. Vedic, Vedic. So one of the things we do as Druids is we study the Vedas. We read the Rig Veda, and but that I mean that's when you're studying towards initiation. That's the kind of thing we look at. Um, so the Druid was the highest class. It's called the sacred class, equivalent of Brahmins, and the king or the queen came from the warrior class, and they had to be ritually elevated to be part of the sacred class. Just like we do today, we recently saw Prince Charles get elevated to be a king, and you had to have, I don't know who they had, an archbishop or somebody like that, um, to ritually elevate him, right? Well, that's exactly what the Druids did for the king. Um, and so the Druids always worked with the nobility. They were the teachers of the children of the nobility. They were the political advisors to the kings. They were the ambassadors, the lawyers, the judges, doctors, In other words, they were called the Aesdana, or the people of arts. They were the intellectuals. They were the educated sacred class, clergy, also magicians, all that. The witch, on the other hand, was a whole other beast. The witch was worked by him or herself. They were a cunning man or a wise woman. They lived on the fringe of society, and people were scared of them because you didn't know whose side they were on. With the Druid, you always knew that they were going to be working for the tribe and on the side of the king. With the witch, they are a law unto themselves. So they could go one way or they could go the other, and you don't know. So
Interesting.
so the witch was working with the common people in the village as a doctor, veterinarian, midwife, herbalist, doing magic. Whatever had to be done was being done. They were kind of shamanic figures, but they were working with the lower classes, and they were feared. And it's always been like that.
Interesting. So interesting. I absolutely did not know that. That's fascinating. So, oh, just a witch.
There are other differences, though. I mean, that's just
No, no, we can keep it at the simple. That I love that.
okay.
So so in your, again, a lot of your practices are very similar to those of different forms of the craft, your ritual and your magical things and things like that. So I know in your book you said literally become a modern druid. How does being a druid help you in 2024? Because my show's kind of about how do we embrace our best life now? How can we jump into it? You've been on this path for a long time, since like 1984.
Mhm.
You're a leader in it. So, how does it help you in both in mundane life and in your spiritual practice?
Well, from our point of view, I mean, we've been at this for 2,000 years now, but when we look at society today, it seems pretty crazy. Pretty People are going insane, literally. And I personally do not have a cell phone. And this is, people can't believe it, but I don't have a smartphone. I have an old flip phone, but it's very deliberate because the last thing I want is to be trapped 24/7 with a computer in front of my face, which is what I see people doing all the time, which I think is tragic. Um, and when I do go online, what I find disturbing is if I say I'm investigating an archaeological site and I Google it, things start popping up. Like every few seconds, something pops up and it ruins your train of thought. So we literally are being trained to not think. It's like you think for a minute and then you're interrupted. So I try very hard to read books, and I encourage people to read books. Um, because when you read a book, you can have a continuous train of thought that can go on for hours. So you can think deeply about something without being interrupted. So that's part of it. As I said, the scholarship. The other part is the reverence for nature. And that's the other way that our society is failing right now. We're in deep, deep trouble. And everybody knows this. It's not a secret. you know. I mean, I live in an oak forest in the woods, um, and I can see. I mean, I've been here in this house since 1986, and I've already seen the changes. The winters are different. We used to have every winter, there was always a 2 week or so period when the pipes would freeze and, everything was well below zero. That doesn't happen anymore. That hasn't happened, in 15 years. There's trees outside, horse chestnuts and hawthorns that bloom, and I can remember standing under the trees and the trees being covered with bees, both honeybees and wild bees, little tiny native wild bees. There are a lot of them. And I can remember standing under the tree and just listening to that symphony of buzzing, right? I am lucky now when I stand under the same tree if I see one bee.
Mm, yeah.
And I mean, and my entranceway, there's a light that I always leave on. Um, because I just don't want, I mean, I've had bears in the entranceway, but, I'm trying to prevent that. But anyway, I can remember the clouds of insects were so thick that I had to turn the light off in order to open the door and get into the house, because otherwise I would be allowing a cloud of bugs into the house. Well, these days there might be two moths just kind of dancing around the bulb. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really shocking, and that's what I'm seeing. So the awareness of nature, the respect for nature, and then tuning into nature. So that on a spiritual level, we're working very closely with the water, the fire, the trees, the stones, the herbs.
Yeah, and I'm 100% with you. And that's why I think your path, what I'm so intrigued, because I am all about nature. Even in my craft, in my working, I'm much more nature and tree oriented than even deity. Though I know we'll talk about your deities and things like that as well. So that's, and yeah, we are in trouble. I live
Mhm.
in Los Angeles, and drought due to global climate change. I lost a 100-year-old palm tree a couple years ago due to uh, it had a low immune system due to the drought lasting so long and us not being allowed to water, and
Mhm.
I cried like a child. We have a pine disease, we have a palm disease, and yeah, we need to take care of our plants. So I love the new focus, whatever somebody's belief system or path. I love that we're trying to get a focus back on Earth. So yeah, I think of druids, I think of trees, I think of trees, I think of druids. How do those work into your practice? Your
Okay, well, trees, I have an expression that I use. I say every tree is a church for a druid. And I've actually, we were talking about books. I have actually two tree books. This is one of them, A Druid's Herbal of Sacred Tree Medicine, which is herbal uses of trees, and the Ogham alphabet, which is the old pre-Latin, pre-Christian Celtic alphabet. Um, but um, trees are just so important. This is from the ancient Irish, if anybody's Irish out there, ancient Irish perspective. But trees are they reflect our cosmology, so that I can be in front of a little tiny tree or I can be sitting under a huge oak. It doesn't matter. I'm in church because the roots go down to the underworld of the ancestors, and the She are the good neighbors, the fairies, right? They live under the ground. And that's called the realm of sea, actually, because everybody knows if you keep digging, you're going to hit water. So that's why water is under the ground. That's sea. The sea realm is actually under the ground. And then you have the trunk of the tree, which is where the animals and the people and the birds and the insects and the herbs and the grasses and everybody lives there. That's kind of the middle world. And then you have the branches that go up to the sky realm. And if you look up in the sky, that's where you find fire, because you find all these little fires up there. You have the big fire of the sun, you have the fire of the moon, you have the fire of the stars. And that's where the gods and goddesses are. That's the sky realm. So those are the three realms. So in witchcraft, the big emphasis is on the four directions.
mhm.
When you cast your circle, you always call
Yes,
in northeast,
air,
south.
fire, water, earth. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
north,
I
south, west, east. Yeah.
I do that, but in a completely different, I do it in a very different way, but I do it because I know that's what people expect in ritual. They want to have that. But the most important thing for us is that vertical, the underworld, middle world, upper world. But when we call in directions, there's at least five.
Mm.
Okay. And north is fire and the eagle, and east is salmon and earth. South is the sow or the boar and water. West is the stag and air. And the center is sovereignty. So it's the mare, M-A-R-E, the female horse, the mare of sovereignty, because any herd of horses or reindeer, um, and I don't know about cows. I don't know. Does a female cow lead the herd, or is it a bull? I
You
don't know,
got me. We'll
but
have to look that up.
yeah,
We'll
but
ask
among
Google.
horses and reindeer and deer, it's a female that leads the herd. So that's why the goddess of sovereignty is a female horse, the mare of sovereignty, and she's in the center.
I love that because I've worked different compasses, an air compass where you put air in the south, and an elemental compass where you put earth in the north. To me, it's always what you put in the north is the compass you're working. I love that. And this is the only one that I haven't heard water being in the west.
No, water's in the south.
I love that because it's underground, right?
Well, no, it has to do with, okay, if you're in Ireland, say, or even in Britain, you're going to go trading in the summer. You're going to get in your boat and you're going to go trading. So everybody knows that if you get in your boat in the summer and you go north and you keep going north, you get to a place where the sun never sets. So that's why that's the home of the fire. So the fire is in the north. Logic, right?
Yes.
And then when you're done all your trading, and the days are starting to get darker, you turn around, you go south. So south becomes not only water, but the dark, because and the Celts only had two seasons. They had the light season of the year and the dark season of the year, or summer and winter. That's all they ever had. But you turn around, you go south, and the dark is where you incubate poems and music,
Mhm.
songs. You go into the dark to bring forth poetry. You have to go within to bring it out. So the south, which is water, is poetry and um, song. The west is air, which is history keeping and storytelling and genealogy. These are all druidic functions, by the way.
That is beautiful. And I know poetry is a part because you even wrote in your book, like poetry is magic and magic is poetry almost. So I love that. It's so creative that way. Um, so I'm going to go back to that other question. We know that the world is crazy now and people are going crazy. And we know, I agree wholeheartedly that we have to take care of this earth and this planet. But again, on a day to day, does your ritual or your practice going to, living in life in 2024, is it the deities you work with or the practice or the ritual or the magical practices? I know your tools are slightly different than our tools.
We don't put as much of an emphasis on magic. It's a different emphasis. So for the Celts, and remember, Druidism comes out of Celtic culture, so this is a Celtic thing. But for the Celts, you had different deities that you worked with depending on what you were doing in life. So if you were, and this is a druidic function, but if you were a healer, a druidic healer, a doctor, an herbalist, you would be working with Ermid, maybe, who is a goddess of herbalism, or Dian Kecht, who's a god of medicine, or Mia. So a warrior would work with a warrior god. A craftsman would work with a crafts deity. For example, Bridget is the goddess of smithcraft, the forge, right? Making swords and iron implements. And Lu is master craftsman of every art, and he's the god of goldsmiths. So the fabulous Celtic jewelry, the torques, the golden torques that they wear around their neck, or that they wore. I mean, all that stuff that they would have worked with Lu. And the way it works is you have maybe an altar set up for that particular deity. You make offerings to them. You include them in your feasts. Witches have the silent supper, at
I'm
Samhain.
sorry. Yeah, silence. Yeah.
But that's the only time I think you really do that, right? For the Celts, every time you had a feast or a major family event, you would put out food for the deities that you were working with. and they become a member of your family. So it's a family relationship. And the attitude is that you want to be just like them. So if Lou is a master goldsmith and you're a goldsmith and you're working with gold, you want to be just like Lou. It's very different from the whole Christian, I'm really bad. I was born a sinner. I should feel terrible.
Yeah.
It's the complete opposite. It's like this god or goddess is going to make me better. They're going to make me more than I am. I'm going to expand. I'm going to be even more creative, more talented, and that's the attitude.
I love that. Absolutely love that. Um, yes, and I'm going to start inviting him to all my meals, breakfast, lunch,
There you
dinner. Because
go.
yeah, we do dumb suppers, we do salad, and I do them when people passing and stuff. But that's beautiful.
Mhm.
Um, do you follow the Sabbats? Do you do? Are your is your wheel of the year the same as ours, like the equinoxes, solstice, and the
Well, if
quarters?
you're a
Or
strict Celtic Reconstructionist Druid, um, then it's, Samhain, Imbolc, Beltane or Beltana, and Lunasa. Those are the holy days.
Mhm.
The in betweens, like the solstices and equinoxes, are very minor. They were observed. If you can find little folk practices among the Celts, but they were not high holy days. That's a different religion. That's Scandinavian religion. Is very big into solstices and
Mhm.
equinoxes. And I just went to a Germanic pagan midsummer bloat because midsummer is really big if you're Germanic. Um, but that's not really Celtic. And so, what you would call cross quarters, those are the most important holy days.
I love that. I love that. So do you work in, I know you have an initiation process and you, again,
Mhm.
you sound like you're the educated ones you have to learn. I know there's different paths and stuff. Do you have circles or what we would call covens? I don't know if you work in that. Is it a big organization or is it all different?
Um, well, Druids have what's called groves.
Grove,
And
that's right. The
yeah,
Grove.
I
Right.
ran groves for 30 years. I had three different groves, each lasted around a decade. Um, but the group that I work with now is called Tribe of the Oak. So tribeoftheoak.org, if anyone's interested. You can write to us if you want to become an initiate. But as I said in the start of the talk, we're very scholarly. So you have to be prepared to read actual books. You can't get trained on TikTok. You know, there, there's
Yay.
people now that think that they're trained because they went on TikTok.
I
You know,
know, I know, I
it's
know.
not like that.
It's the same in my practice. It's like,
Right. No, I know.
really? And
Yeah. Oh,
you've
yeah,
learned
really.
you've learned your craft in 30 seconds. Now you're
That's
an
what they
expert.
but they honestly believe that. They think that.
Mhm.
So with us, what you have to do, we have a basic book list. If you go to tribeoftheoak.org, you can see the book list. It's there. And you have to read a certain number of books and you have to report back to your mentor um, after you've read the basic books. And then that's how you start. You start by reading the books because we don't want to really invest years of time with you unless we know that you're serious and you have a good grounding, right? So you read the books and then you get a mentor and you work one on one with somebody. And we have specific lessons and you do each lesson at your own pace. And the quickest anyone ever did it was 1 year, but that was a woman from South Africa who had a PhD, and she did it in 1 year. But normally people take anywhere from 3 to 5 years, something like that.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's good. So on your gatherings, on your like 4 high holy days, do you get, I know the LA Grove, they meet here in the Angeles Crest Forest, they beautiful and they get together. Do you guys have, are you guys all over or do you have each your individual areas, your Massachusetts Druids?
We're all over the world.
Well, I know. Well, no, I
um,
know, but I mean, do you guys do virtual things together
oh,
or do you
yeah.
just find?
Um, it became incredibly valuable during COVID because we had just started setting up virtual rituals. And we actually have a page on Facebook, Tribe of the Oak Public Rights, I think it's called. And we also have a Tribe of the Oak public forum. You can find us, if you want to join. We have a private page, but only people working towards initiation go there. But right before COVID, we started doing online rituals, and we had to because we had people in Ireland, we had people in England, we had at one point we had somebody in Japan, we've had people in Mexico, we've had people in Canada, all across the United States. So how are we supposed to get together, and that was the only way we could get together. And we had people in South Africa, um, I mean everywhere, Australia, so it's just impossible. So then when COVID hit, we just got into it, and we're doing another one in, I think, August 25th. Um,
Really?
Wait a minute, August, sorry. And I'd have to look it up. But if you go to the Tribe of the Oak public rights page, it should all be there. But anyway, we're doing another one for Lunasa. And
Nice.
yeah, we offer them and they're public, so anybody can attend. That's been like a service that we've been doing.
That is beautiful. And I highly recommend it. Again, I haven't done it online, but the ones that I've done here in Los Angeles were some of the most beautiful, magical, heartfelt rituals. Amazing. um, so I know you do some, again, looking at your book, charms and divination. So divination is part of your practice or your belief system? Because we do a lot of divination.
Yes. I use the Om alphabet a lot. As I said, that's the old pre-Latin, pre-Christian Celtic alphabet, probably second century, maybe older, second or third century. But that's all outlined in this book, The Druid's Herbal of Sacred Tree Medicine.
I want to get
Um,
that one.
but I made my own deck, with it's a tree alphabet. So instead of A, B, C, D, E, F, G, it's oak, ash, holly, those are the letters, and that's the actual alphabet. And we do know that it was used by the Druids, both to write things, and we don't know if they used it for divination, but I bet they did. Um, but I have a lot of magical techniques also in that I describe, magical poetic techniques where you go into trance to get the answer
Ah,
to a question in the book.
I love that. I love that. Um, okay, well, I'm intrigued. I cannot wait to really sit down with this and read. I believe in reading as well. So before we go, so how can people find out about you? Can you say that website again that people can come to your grove? And what about you, your books and all that? Because you guys, if you like me and my elemental waste, you're gonna love the Druidic path. So check it out.
Well, I have an author page on Amazon. If you just put Ellen Everett Hopman author, all my books come up. I also have my own website, elleneverethopman.com. All my books are there. The Druid group is tribeoftheoak.org. Again, if you're interested in Druidism, you can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. I try to post at least once a week on Instagram. I have Ellen Everett Hopman author on Facebook. You can find me. So I'm kind of all over.
Do you have any public things coming up or book signings or anything like that that anybody can know about in your area, Massachusetts area or anywhere?
Yeah, actually, I just came back from Florida. I'm going to be at the BAM Druid Gathering, BAM, which is outside of Boston. That'll be in September. Um, but coming up, if anybody's in New England, I'm getting ready to do a Lunasa public ritual at the University of Massachusetts on August 11th. And it's with a group called New Moon in the Valley. So if you look up New Moon in the Valley on Facebook, you'll find us. And it's going to be a Druid ritual. And what else? If you write to me, there's a group that's trying to get me to do online classes, but we need to have a certain number of people for each class before anything happens. So if you're interested in online classes, let me know and I can put you in touch with them.
And I was going to go the same thing about my school. Come teach at my school.
Well,
We're
I'd be
building
happy
paths and
to.
open.
Yeah,
Yes.
online,
Because
if I can
again,
teach online. Yeah.
yeah, it's all online. It's all, they're everywhere on the world, just like
Yeah, I'd be
this
happy to
new
do
modern
that.
world we live in, this
Yeah.
wacky world. So you guys check her out. Ellen Everett Hopman, lots of books. And again, her herbalist books, her tree books, but this one I could speak for personally, the rituals, techniques, and magical practices. Celtic Druidry. So thank you so much. Any last words you want for anybody of anything you want to say?
Put down the cell phone. I'm
Best advice
serious.
you've had.
Just get rid of the cell phone. Get a flip phone so you don't have to be tied
Oh,
to the cell phone all the time.
oh, I don't know. I don't know. But that
See,
is probably the best advice we've heard all year. Anyway,
especially for
thank you.
kids.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you for bringing your beautiful magic to the witching hour.